This is Jerry van der Walt.
Blooper's real.
He's a legend.
Yeah.
Penny frowns upon this kind of behavior. She's doing that right now. I can see her. I can actually see her doing it. It's not cool. Yeah, it's not cool at all, Penny.
Hi guys, my name is Jerry, I'm from Wild Eye, and this is episode 17 of our wildlife photography Q&A video series. Now, this episode, compared to the rest of them, we're going to focus on one question specifically. It's one that it's been on social media for quite some time. Dee asked a nice detailed one. I'm going to read this for you now. And it is something that also comes up on photo safaris. It has to do with rhino images, as we know, terrible poaching, endangered, the whole thing, and posting those images online and then saying where it was taken. So, the question that Dee had is this. With the media, Prime Media, The Times, SA, and New York Daily, to name the two that I've seen, yet again posting articles this week highlighting the apparent use by poachers of geotagged photos, specifically on Instagram to track rhinos, and the info coming from the man in charge of the company managing all the SANParks marketing. Not sure that whether you've covered this before. No, Dee, we have not. But I was wondering what the team's views are and possible guidelines on the posting of rhino images, whether on Instagram, Facebook, websites, and in many occasions mentioning the location or reserve. Do you ever get negative reactions when rhino images appear on your blogs? Marlon posted one on Madikwe now in the last week, and there was a rhino image in there. Reason for the question, I was lambasted by one of my followers on Facebook photography page this week for posting an image taken whilst on the Madikwe boot camp. So, we're going to get the entire team to have a crack at this one. I asked the question of the day in episode 16. I'll link it up here for you. You can go and check it out over here. That, what do you guys think, first of all, before we get stuck in? Now, there's a whole bunch of comments that came in. It's very much, I think we're all in a certain amount of agreement that there is an issue and you shouldn't go live streaming on something like Periscope and Meerkat. Live stream from the field and say, I'm sitting right here in Madikwe, at this dam, there's the GPS coordinates, and look at this wonderful rhino. You see, I mean, you guys can go check out the Wild Eye Facebook page. This is the address down here, Wild Eye SA, yeah? I think it does cut both ways, but I've got a thing. I mean, I can go into any game reserve, Madikwe, Mara, Sabi, take your pick. You can sit with a rhino. I can take a picture that's GPS located. I can drive away for an hour, go have sundowners, and come back to the exact same spot knowing exactly where to go, and I'm going to struggle to find that animal. More often than not, that is the case. So now, in my mind, I'll kind of wrap this whole thing up later on. I'm thinking, if I post an image to Instagram, even if I tag that thing, Mr. Poacher, wherever the hell you live, is going to look at that, arrange a trip to Madikwe, break through the gate, whatever the case is, go and find my GPS coordinate a day or a week later and look for the rhino. So the geotagging thing for me is a bit there or there, unless it's live streaming. The thing that comes in is, and I mentioned this yesterday, it's all good. I mentioned this yesterday, is for someone to get upset that you post an image of a rhino and say it was taken in Madikwe. We know there are rhino there. We know there are rhino in the Kruger and in the Mara and all these places. It's the geotagging thing and how we negotiate and manage this process online. So go and have a look at the Wild Eye Facebook page. People left some interesting comments there. Again, nobody's really extreme in saying you should never do it or this is the case. But let's have a listen and see what the guys in the office think. And then we'll wrap it up and see how it goes from there.
So this is an interesting topic, and I think you can debate it from either side. Where I think adding geolocations and tagging and that sort of stuff and sharing immediately from the field could potentially contribute to poaching is when you're sitting at a waterhole and you've said that there's a rhino in here. But that being said, I don't think that the guys are sitting with cell phones looking and monitoring Instagram feeds and Twitter and that sort of stuff to actually see where these animals are. The areas that contain rhinos are well known to poachers. apart perhaps from small private reserves and farms, which are probably of main concern when it comes to rhino poaching, because the loss of 2 or 3 individuals in a population of 10, for example, is far greater than 5 individuals out of a population of 300. I think we're at a point now where most small private reserves who have rhinos have either lost those rhinos or have ended up dehorning or taking some sort of measures to translocate and move those individuals. So again, I'm not too sure how that works, and I'm almost certain that those kind of people who have rhinos on that sort of scale of property wouldn't be sharing information and going out and doing game drives and saying these are, these are the rhinos and look how beautiful they are. The one aspect where sharing images and locations and that sort of stuff could potentially have a negative impact is when you're actually looking at individuals. So you share an image of an individual with an incredibly large horn. That then makes it quite interesting for anyone, and it can very easily then get shared down the line to say, look, there is a rhino with a fairly large horn that has been seen in this reserve, for example. Adding locations and that sort of stuff from one aspect, if you say that this rhino image was taken in Madikwe, Pilanesberg, whatever the case is, it's no news to anybody that there are rhino in those reserves, regardless of whether they are poachers or not. They know where these animals are found. When you start to get down to geotagging and location-wise, trust me, poachers have a far greater understanding of the landscape and the movement of these animals. They will find game paths. They will sit at water holes. It's not a random walk through the bush to try and find these things. So geotagging and geolocations, even then, not really a big thing. And the other side of that is if you are in a vehicle, you're driving a road, and you've geotagged a location on that, the poachers are not going to be using that same road to get there. These guys aren't sniping things from vehicles and getting out and fetching stuff. It's a far more complicated and covert operation than that. Where I suppose it just comes down to a simple question. What is the point of declaring the information or saying where an image was taken? I suppose from that side of things, you could just say this is a rhino. It doesn't matter where it was taken. And as I think David Rosenzweig has said, what value does that add to the actual image by saying it was taken in Kruger Park or Madikwe or whatever the case is? And unless it's linked to perhaps something from a conservation perspective to say that there is significant efforts in Madikwe to combat rhino poaching, why would you need to say where it is? Most people would look at an image and be able to say, oh, well, I know those hills in the background, that's Pilanesberg, or I know that exact waterhole, that's Madikwe. So yeah, I suppose it all just boils down to a very simple thing. Rather than going into whether you should be mentioning location and that sort of stuff, what is the point of actually mentioning the location, which is probably the fundamental question of this whole thing. It doesn't add any value to an image unless you're actually relating it to a conservation point of view. Sharing images real time from the field, potential risk, not a great risk. But again, I think it's a sensitive issue, and we should probably be looking at ways of minimizing any sort of contribution. But I don't think that poachers are scrolling and searching through social media timelines and feeds to kind of find their next target. It's just not the way it works.
Hi there guys, Marlon here. It's quite an interesting topic of conversation this morning. And between Andrew and Jerry shared some vital information and very, very good points. And so I'm not going to elaborate too much on that. But for me personally, obviously we care greatly for our wildlife. The last thing we want would be endanger them. And the poaching crisis in South Africa especially is reaching heights that it's never seen before, and it's really, really bad at the moment. So, it is something that we care about. In the question that Jerry read out earlier, there was a comment made about a blog that I shared on, and including rhino images in the blogs. Like Andrew and them said, sharing an exact location, especially if it's live feeds, it's not ideal. So if there's 2 rhinos at the waterhole, you say that the rhinos are at this waterhole right now, awesome. Possibly information like that could be tracked down. In the dry season especially, rhinos are, they are creatures of habit. Big bulls, they might frequent certain waterholes more than others. And yes, if it is a waterhole that's popular with rhino, then it could be a problem, and probably not ideal to disclose the locations of a waterhole like that. So yeah, you need to really think about it, including it in a blog. If we're gonna stop talking about rhinos entirely, if we're going to stop posting rhinos, I enjoy writing, I enjoy blogs, I enjoy sharing them with you. And I feel that rhinos are a massive part of a safari experience, especially in places where they are common. And by excluding them and not writing about them and not telling their story and showing their beauty, I believe that also takes away from sharing the experience of rhinos. And we need to talk about them. We need to bring them into public light. We need people to see them, to see how beautiful they are. We need to write about them. And like Andrew said earlier, you don't need to put in the location of every single rhino. We don't need to say this rhino was seen here. It doesn't add value to anything, you know. A story in its own and just a beautiful image of a rhino does a lot, video and so forth. But in blog content, if I'm writing about an area, I'm trying to raise awareness of that area. I'm trying to share the beauty of that area and that landscape. And if I do include a rhino image or two, then I feel, from my point of view, you know, like Andrew said, a lot of people, these poaching units, you know, guys are in this business. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. So it's not something that these people that know about. But me including it in there, I think it adds value to rhinos as a species, to the area, to the value of the area. So from my point of view, that's why I did include it. Going forward, definitely something to be mindful of. You know, like I said, the dry season is approaching. If you're constantly telling people that rhinos are accumulating at this place or that waterhole, or you know, these game paths, etc., then you know, probably not ideal. But in general, don't stop talking about rhinos. Don't stop posting images about rhinos. They need us to talk about them. They need us to be their voice. Yeah, I think going forward, we'd love to hear from you, and look forward to hearing the response from this video, which yeah, I think it's a great idea by Jerry. Thank you very much, guys, and cheers. Till next time.
Hi, morning, guys. Jono here. I think first of all, what I'd like to express is that we certainly value everybody's opinions on this, and clearly by the comments that have been made on certain platforms, everybody has an opinion on it, and obviously, clearly it is highly emotive, rightly so. So we do respect everyone's opinion. It's not necessarily our opinion that counts. What we want to try and do is give further insight into real situations. And on that point, what I'm going to concentrate my discussion on is Madikwe Game Reserve in South Africa, Northwest Province. I've been heavily involved in conservation there over the last 10 years, have taken a number of conservation groups through there, and primarily a lot of the work that we've done has been on rhino. By doing that, I have interacted fairly extensively with park management, ecologists, and even the counter-poaching unit that exists in the reserve. Madikwe has a very proud record. When I say proud, they have lost rhino, but as a percentage of the meta population there, it has been comparatively to the rest of South Africa very low. And that's not a question. That's not because people haven't posted rhino images from Madikwe. It's really because their counter-poaching unit is probably more effective than it may be in other reserves. And that's the sole reason why they have been more effective than others. Posting rhino, from the park's perspective, speaking to the chief operating officer in the park when I was there a few weeks ago, he mentioned, you know, Madikwe is advertised as a Big Five reserve. Big Five by nature includes rhino. So in any platform, web, wherever you search, whether you have ulterior motives, whatever it is, you know that Madikwe is a Big Five reserve, so you know there are rhinos in there. So if you post an image out of Madikwe that is a rhino, there's nothing new. That's the most important point. What they do try and guard against is people posting images of particular animals that have impressive horns that obviously would fetch a much higher value and when selling it to whoever's going to purchase it. So they do discourage that. They do discourage posting images and naming the waterhole or the area where that photograph was taken. But again, as Jerry mentioned, you know, the rhinos do move around. They obviously are quite territorial, but I don't think it's anything new to the poachers where those rhinos are. There's always been comments in South African media about insight from the inside or information coming from the inside. I think that's certainly a far bigger problem that we need to address as opposed to posting an image out of there. There's possibly, and I stress possibly, there's possibly internal people, whether they be guides, rangers, whatever they may be, working in these reserves that are sending information and intelligence out of the reserves. So as I said, that is the bigger problem that we need to face. From a rhino point of view, clearly everybody that lives in the East, and all of this is directed at the East, but it's not necessarily only isolated to the East, the trade in rhino horn, but not everybody uses and consumes rhino horn. If they did, we wouldn't be having this conversation because there would be no rhino. There are a lot of people that live in the East that have and the rest of the world have an affinity for the rhino. And if we didn't post images of these rhino, how much, saving the species is about creating awareness. How much awareness would we lose out on if we didn't post great images of these magnificent animals? Marlon's just done a blog post on the last week that him and I were guiding Dave Marshak in Madikwe, and he posted a magnificent image. I'm not going to say where it's from for obvious reasons, but it really encapsulates the essence of the rhino and the darkness surrounding the rhino. Check out the latest blog post on the WildEye page, and it's truly magnificent. And I think what you need to try and do is not necessarily tell where the animals are. Clearly, if you say they're in Madikwe, that's not a problem. You need to send a conservation message with that image. We've done it many, many times. I've done it personally many times, putting images online of rhino and Madikwe. But in saying that, trying to create awareness of the creature, the plight of the creature, the magnificence of the creature, what the repercussions are if the rhino poaching epidemic continues. So that's the important part, is continuing with awareness. And the only way we're going to create more awareness is by posting more images online. That's my feeling. Cheers.
Hi everyone, Penny here. As everyone said, this is an incredibly interesting topic, and there's been a lot of debate, a lot of social coverage on it, arguments, pretty much covering absolutely everything about rhino poaching and geotagging your images. The guys have all had really interesting answers and covered basically everything, but I think we want to obviously protect our natural heritage, and with rhino poaching, it's obviously increasing, and we don't know what the population is going to be in a couple of years' time, so that is obviously a huge concern. And with geotagging, I think it was Andrew who mentioned, the poachers out there, they already know the areas that the rhinos are in. This is not new for them. This is obviously their livelihood. They want to get the most out of it, so they're going to do a whole bunch of research, and it's not just on looking at Facebook and seeing what photographer tagged which rhino and where and all of that. They already know the areas that they're looking at. So with geotagging, I don't necessarily think that it makes a huge difference, because I think obviously the poachers already know, but maybe geotagging shouldn't be done or mentioned where the area is, because it's just reaffirming that there are still rhinos in that area. Like Jono said, I think we should definitely keep posting, but I don't think we should attack people for mentioning where the rhinos were. But I don't know, it's a tricky topic that I'm still trying to think exactly where I stand. So if I had to say, like, I came back from Madikwe, there's a rhino, I highly doubt that a whole bunch of poachers are going to go to Madikwe and go walking and find these rhinos, because obviously there are people, there are rangers that are scouting the areas, there are anti-poachers going around making sure that the animals and all the animals are safe. So I think as long as you don't give the latitude and longitude and the pinpoint on the map, I don't necessarily think it makes a difference. But again, I suppose it does reaffirm where the animal is. So I don't know, I'm not 100% sure actually what my answer is. But again, I think we should carry on posting. This is our natural heritage, show people what is out there, especially for people that aren't able to necessarily come to Africa. They must still think putting our pictures out there is still encouraging them and letting them be a part of something that they might not be. Yes, so that's about it. Have a good Friday and weekend ahead.
Well, guys, there you have it. I don't think there's a hell of a lot I can add to that. I mean, like I said initially, the Facebook comments we had, the stuff that the team is saying in here, I'm very proud of these guys because the ethics that we as a company pull through and keep on doing, just it's an amazing thing. Common sense, I think, really is it. I mean, to put GPS locations. I've been in the travel and photography game for a hell of a long time, and I've yet to see anybody be so specific as to where they've taken it. So, yeah, hey, common sense, but still, let's keep the question of the day from yesterday. I would still like to know what you guys think. You've heard what we as a team thinks. Go and check out the Wildeye Facebook page, and then add to the discussion. I, for one, I'm not going to stop posting rhino images. I think Penny mentioned it earlier on. It's important for us to show the beauty of these animals. Jono mentioned it as well. So it's an important thing for us to show. I will keep on saying, me personally, this was taken in Madikwe. If I'm going to a small reserve somewhere, I'm not going to say this was taken on Marlin's game farm, which is 2 hectares. That's a security risk. There's issues there. But from a bigger point of view, where we all travel to, Masai Mara, Sabi Sands, all the big places, I'm happy, me personally, to say it was taken there. I've been posting images that were 3-4 years old now and saying it's Madikwe and people getting upset. Some of those animals might not be alive anymore, yeah? Natural causes. So, common sense, I think really that's it. But leave me your comments on this, either on the Wildeye Facebook page or then on the YouTube channel directly, and let's discuss. That was episode 17. It was a very specific question that makes for lots of conversation. That's why we chose to do it like this. Next week, today is Friday. You guys will see this later on Friday. Periscope, you're seeing it live. Hi, Kim. Hi, Nancy. Yeah. We're going to put the next episode 18, out next week. I've already got a couple of questions lined up. So if you're new to this, Periscope, you guys as well, if you're new to this, how it works, ask me your wildlife photography questions, anything, and we will answer them for you. If I can't do it, I'll get the team in and we will answer your questions. When I started out, I would have loved to have the opportunity to ask someone questions. I mean, you go and search books and internet and stuff. Ask us and we will answer them for you. My name is Jerry. I will see you next time.